our show. As this is my first broadcast of 2019, let me say a very warm welcome and Happy New Year to you all. Community Matters is here to ask questions that matter to our community life. My first guest tonight is Helen Sismore from Guide Dogs. Welcome, Helen.
Hello, welcome to you.
Thank you. Helen is here to talk about sight loss and the fantastic work of supporting people who are blind or partially sighted. She writes, "We provide the support to enable children to become independent adults and for adults to have the support they need to live the life they want." So let's look at this in a little more detail. First of all, what proportion of the population have sight loss?
At the moment, there's 2 million people in the UK living with sight loss. That's set to double by 2050, and that's because we're all living longer. And the sight loss, many people think of sight loss as people are totally blind, and actually sight loss can be any kind of condition. And 1 in 12 at the age of 60 start to incur an uncorrectable sight condition.
That would need other support to enable them to live an independent life.
Yes, so I'll share a story with you. I had a client who lost his sight overnight. He was in his 40s, he was a paramedic, and he had a stroke. And he went to bed with full sight, woke up the next morning with no sight at all. So he was a man's man. He was a big hunter-gatherer, liked to put the roof over the head of the family, and it was devastating for him. And he said to me, all I want to do is be able to find the biscuits in his kitchen. And his wife kept moving the biscuit tin. And it's as simple as that, in the fact of when you lose your sight, it's the little things that actually become major things. And those little things could be things just as much as going out the front door, yet alone getting on the pavement and trying to find the bus stop or trying to get to wherever you want to get to, because of all the problems that are on the pavements out there, like cars are parked on pavements, wheelie bins, A-boards, all of that kind of thing. So, you know, we are there to actually look at providing the support that they need to enable people to get out and about independently. We also provide support for parents and children, so young people, because when you're born, you're often born as you are born with as a blank sheet. So you learn from your peers. So you learn to eat, to get dressed. You learn your social skills, all from your peer group. Well, if you're born blind, you can't do that. That's not available to you. So actually you need help to be able to be the best you can be, and we can work with parents and families from 0 up to any age, really.
So I think I would understand more that people from the age of 60 will develop some form of sight loss. I understand that children can be born blind, sad as it is, but they can be helped to overcome that as a disability. But then do people develop sight loss at any age?
Yes. As I mentioned about the chap in his 40s, went to bed perfectly okay, woke up totally blind, and that was through a stroke. You can, 1 in 12 at the age of 60, as I've mentioned, that's usually something called an age-related macular degeneration, and that's where what will happen is the centre vision will start to disappear. You'll get a black sort of blob right in the centre of your eye. So you've got central vision and you've got peripheral vision. So your central vision allows you to read and look at detail. So if you imagine a black blob in the centre of your eye, you're not going to be able to see someone's face, and that kind of condition you get in a sort of 60s upwards. So it's much harder for people then to learn how to use the residual sight, or to actually learn new ways of getting out and about independently. And that's where we can come and help with services that we provide.
Now, you mentioned the biscuit tin, and therefore the close family would need to be, as it were, retrained to be more helpful and thoughtful about the needs of somebody with sight loss. But you also mentioned something which, for the area that we live in here, would particularly concern me, that if there are quite a number of people with sight loss that are being impeded on getting along the pavement because cars are parked one wheel on the pavement, or wheelie bins are left outside fronts of houses, that must be a real nuisance.
We know that 70,000 people rarely leave their homes with sight loss, and we also never leave their homes, and we know 180,000 rarely leave their homes, and that's because all of those kind of obstacles are there, and every time you bump into something, it chips away at your independence. And soon you sort of think, well, I'm not going to bother, and one day becomes a week, becomes a month, becomes a year. And isolation, a lot of research that we've done demonstrates that isolation is a big part of sight loss, because your world becomes a lot smaller. So one of the services that we can actually deliver, and you don't have to be a member of Guide Dogs, you don't have to be a client. Anyone who supports anyone with sight loss, whether it's a carer or a family member, can actually ask us to deliver some training with them, which is friends and family training, and it does exactly what you've just been saying. Actually, it's common sense training. It's done in their own home or their home environment, and it allows them to actually understand the absolute basic information around good sight guiding, because that's imperative, and it's about giving the right information at the right time, in a timely fashion. But also, we as a sighted community often get hung up with the kind of terminology. Can I use the word blind? Can I use the word see? What shall I say? What are these people? And actually, I say to people, just say it as it is, because at the end of the day, don't tie yourself up. People who are blind or partially sighted watch television. They just watch it using their ears, rather than their eyes. Or they may be able to still make out parts of the actual screen. And there is also audio description. So, and technology these days is absolutely fantastic. So I'd say don't get hung up with the language, but go and ask people. Just don't shy away from them. Ask them what help they need. Yes. That's the important thing here.
I was always taught that in seeing somebody that I might observe to have a disability of some sort, and I think I might be able to help them or might want to help them, of posing that as a question rather than trying to grab them, or even worse, demean them by talking to somebody that I might regard as their carer or the pusher of their wheelchair or something, and say, how can I, what does he need?
Exactly.
Talk to the person themselves. They are a human being still,
and they are in their own right.
Yes.
We had a guide dog owner actually who lost his way, and he stopped somebody and said, "Can you tell me the directions to get to wherever it was?" And this person bent down to the guide dog, and this is honestly true. I am not making this up. Bent down to the guide dog, gave the dog exact directions, got up and walked away.
Oh God!
And it was as if oh well, okay, the dog's got this sat nav inbuilt into it, and off you go.
Yes. Wow. Again, I want to come to how the wider community can contribute to that. And I just had a thought went through my mind. Again, we're talking about wheelie bins and obstructions on pavements, as to whether any community's thought of becoming a sight loss friendly community, a sight loss friendly area.
That would be music to my ears. And actually we would love to work with communities just to build awareness about the basic everyday obstacles that actually are in our world. And many streets, and we've got a lot of streets around this area, that they were built and they were not built for having cars parked on the roads, and you've got to have service vehicles allowed to get through. So in some areas cars have to park on pavements. But what I would actually say is if you've got to park on a pavement because your street is very narrow, just look around you, and if there are other obstacles like street furniture, like a lamppost or something, don't park so that you're obstructing the pavement even more so, you're narrowing it down. Just look at your environment. And so many people have said to me, oh, well, I'm only going to take 2 minutes to go to the shop. Well, it only takes 1 minute for somebody wanting to walk past. And actually, you can't say these days, well, I've left enough room for a wheelchair, because actually wheelchairs are, all different sizes, as are pushchairs and prams. If people have got twins or triplets, there are all sorts of widths and sizes and lengths. So actually, you can't actually say that anymore. So we would say, just look at your environment. If you don't need to park on the pavement, please don't. Just use your legs and walk that little bit further.
Yes. I think talking of legs, I think this idea may have legs. I chair a local charity, and I know other local charities. We'll see if one of those can take up this campaign and this idea of having a sight loss friendly area.
It would be lovely, actually, because we've done a lot of research into different cultures having sight loss and age groups. So, and you never know in your community who's got sight loss, because they don't walk around with it sort of tattooed on their forehead or anything, and nor should they. And also, disability can still be a stigma in many different cultures. So we don't want that. We want people to be part of their community and be valued within their community, and actually enable them to be or to feel valued in their community and still be able to get out and about. And another service that we can offer actually is something called the My Guide service, and that is a volunteer-led service, and that could actually work quite nicely with this kind of ambassador of sight loss that you're sort of talking about, because we would recruit a volunteer to work with anyone with sight loss to actually get them out and about and doing the activities that they've probably stopped doing because of their sight loss, but they might not have owned up to it, because actually saying, hey, I've got sight loss is a big thing. If you go to your hospital and the consultant says, I can't do anything more for you medically, you're left reeling really in the fact of, what my confidence and my independence has just gone. I can't drive. I won't be able to get to the shops. I won't be able to meet my friends. I won't be able to be a valued part of my community. So all of that, and actually having a volunteer to work with you to demonstrate to you that actually you can still get out and actually you can still get to do your activities. We had a client who wanted to basically just come into Queensgate and meet his friends for a coffee, and he said to me, all I want to do is just go into Queensgate and go for a coffee. And you think, gosh, that's such a small thing to the rest of us. And the My Guide actually worked with him and enabled him to get from his front door to the bus stop and then back, and it was a very slow process, but it was basically step by step, and it took a few weeks to get there. And he rang me once and he said, Helen, he said, guess where I am? I said, don't know, where are you? He said, I'm in the cafe and I'm with my friend. And he says, and guess what I'm doing? I said, you're having a coffee? And he said, yeah, I'm having a coffee. And he said, and he burst into tears. And I said, why are you crying? And he said, because the emotion of being able to do this on my own, and that's because of the My Guide that I had that's enabled me to do that.
Wonderful. Putting life back into people.
It's enriching their lives.
It must be.
Yeah. And I still say that we have people who work for our charity have the best job ever, because you really are life changing in the services that you deliver.
Now, when I introduced you, and I noticed you're wearing on your sweatshirt the logo Guide Dogs. Can you tell us a bit about Guide Dogs?
I certainly can. We started back in 1935, and actually the seed was sown after the First World War, where the soldiers were coming back and they'd lost their sight through the gas in the trenches. So that was the initial seed. And one of the soldiers that came back at that time was with his consultant walking around the grounds of the hospital, and his consultant had a German Shepherd at the time, and they were taking a stroll, and the consultant was called away. And when he came, and he said to the patient, just sit in that seat, look after my dog, do not move. So he came back and he said, where are they? I couldn't find them. And he thought, oh my goodness, I've lost the patient, and more importantly, I've lost my dog. Yeah. So he sort of scoured the grounds of this hospital, and he saw the dog naturally leading the patient who'd lost his sight around these gardens, and that was the seed of perhaps a dog would be able to, if a dog could do that without training, what could the dog do with training? So we started by two ladies near Birmingham in a lock-up garage with 4 German Shepherds, and we trained 4 men at the time who were totally blind, and our services at that time were 4 totally blind people, and it was just the guide dogs. So we've gone from strength to strength. We were, we are the world leading training organisation of assistance dogs. We breed around 1,500 puppies a year, and we've got about 300 brood stock bitches that live in families, and they will breed until they're about 7. And then we place around 800 to 900 partnerships a year. And you might think, well, what do you do with the other dogs? And actually, some of those dogs go back into the breeding program. So our research about breeding is very scientific, and we put an awful lot of effort into that because we want to breed the best possible dogs. And then some of our dogs that don't make it are then put out to other organisations. So organisations that use assistance dogs, so they use ours, and we will also bring in dogs to keep the stock line nice and clean. 65% of our dogs are Labrador Retriever crosses. Only 4% are German Shepherds. When we started with German Shepherds, we've had a big turnaround, and we now use Labradoodles because of they don't molt so much as like a Labrador or a German Shepherd, say, for instance. So a lot of work goes into our research, and our waiting lists are, many people will say, oh, but I've got to wait so long for a guide dog, and our waiting lists are lengthy, 18 months to 2 years. And if you just, if you lose your sight, you can't just go and get a guide dog. You've got to demonstrate that you've got good roots, you've got good mobility, you're able to get about independently. So that might be using a long cane, which we can support with. We would not take over the training of long canes. That would sit with the sensory services, but we would sort of add to that training. And you've also got to be able to say to us that you've got at least 3 good routes under your belt that you can actually use a guide dog for. And then we would look at training a guide dog with you after we've done a lot of our assessments and trained you in a hotel setting, and then look at you having a dog moving forward. Gosh. They work until they're about 10, 9 or 10. Yeah. So,
and how old would they be when they first go to
18 months to 2 years.
Right.
So yeah. And actually, any dog you have, you don't just go to puppy class and say, oh, it's trained. You have to continue training that dog every single day of its life, using positive reinforcement, which is about rewarding the good behaviour, and even though you think, oh, it's got the basics, one day it's going to not do what you ask it to do if you just give in. So every single day you've got to, keep those commands going. Yeah.
I'm incredibly impressed, and I'd never realised the amount of science and development and breeding that has gone into providing guide dogs. So it's certainly not the case that if people have got a spare dog after Christmas, then they think, I wonder if I can find a good home for this, I'll offer it to guide dogs. That wouldn't work.
We do have some people, they do breed pups, and they will offer us probably one or the litter. Our tests for our guide dogs start when they're 5 weeks old. So our very first assessment is basically seeing how robust that dog is going to be. Because if you think about probably a guide dog working in a city like Peterborough or even London, they've got to be quite a robust dog. There's lots of noise, lots of traffic, and if you imagine what a dog sees at his or her sight level, there's lots of legs coming at them, lots of noise, lots of traffic, lots of cycles. So you wouldn't want a dog that's quite hesitant or quite nervy. You'd want a very positive dog. So lots of work goes into that assessment, right? And that they start at 5 weeks old. They go out to puppy walkers at about 7 weeks now, and then they stay with their puppy walker for about 12 to 14 months. And that puppy walker is a volunteer. We're always looking for volunteers, and we're always looking for volunteer puppy walkers, so please do get in touch if you want to be a volunteer, or even if you want to look at boarding or any other kind of volunteer. We are a volunteer-led organisation, so we can't do the work we do without volunteers. So please get in touch with that. Then once they've been with their puppy walker, they go to what I call big school. So they go to a training school, and they learn then how to become a guide dog, if you like. So we teach them to go round obstacles. Despite what people think, they do not know when to cross a road. They will indicate to their owner that they're at a crossing point by sitting or standing, and they will slow down as they get to that crossing point, which is an indication that that's a crossing point. And then it's the owner that is actually listening to the traffic and giving the command to go forward to cross the road. And that's another reason why when there's an obstacle on a pavement, it causes a guide dog quite a lot of stress, because the dog will stop, and that's an indication to say to the owner, what are you going to tell me to do? Because I cannot get through that gap, and I've been taught not to just wander on the road. So you've now got to tell me what to do. Whereas normally a guide dog will move around an object. If there's space, they will know the routes. So, it's a partnership with the owner and the guide dog making those decisions together. The dogs will walk from curb to curb edge, so they don't just wander. And a guide dog owner will always walk further than anyone who's sighted, because they walk to the crossing points, whereas we, as sighted people, will just think, I can cross here, and just wander across the road.
Cut the corner. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. So you'll always walk further if you're a long cane user or a guide dog owner.
So how can people contribute to your work? How can they get involved, and where can they find out more information? Well,
they can look at our website, which is www.guidedogs.org.uk.
Guidedogs.org.uk.
Yep. Or they can email our office in Peterborough, which is peterborough@guidedogs.org.uk. And they can give us a telephone call, and our telephone call is on the website as well. Wonderful. Or I can read it out now if you'd like me to.
By all means.
Okay, our telephone number is 0345 143 0223.
What would your message be as we come to the end of this session to people about sight loss and supporting people?
I would say if you are experiencing sight loss, your world hasn't ended. For a start, there are lots and lots of organisations in Peterborough that can help. Peterborough Association for the Blind being one of them. Guide Dogs and RNIB, we're all in Peterborough, so we're all here to help you. If you are a member of the public, I would say just give some thought to people who may have lost their sight or are losing their sight, and think about your environment. Keep your pavements as clear as possible. If you have got wheelie bins and they are on the outside of your wall or gate or fence, just make sure that they're pulled nicely into the curb edge or the wall edge. If you've got A-boards and you've got shops, make sure that they're placed as close to the building as possible. Please don't park on pavements if you can help it. And think about our services that can help keep people mobile, really. And it's not always the guide dog. You know, you can have friends and family training, you can have a My Guide, you can have services that will help family and children.
Wow, that's wonderful. Helen Sismore from Guide Dogs, thank you so very much for being my guest this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're heading for a short break. Do stay tuned, as after the break, Community Matters will explore a little more about sight loss in a different way, and also a charity appeal about homelessness with our second guest of the evening. Here we go into our break time now.
Stay tuned to Salaam Radio after this short ad break.
It does not take much to bring some difference. You give some change, which makes a change, because nothing gets mileage like a charity. Just a little change turns into a chain, and before we know it, the results are massive. So give a little to make a big difference. To give donations, call UKIM on 0207 387 2157.
Need a great place to chill out? Look no further than The Lounge for quality food and drinks at a great price. Try our varied menu: pasta, seafood, burgers, grills, salad, soup, rice and sides. Also hot and cold drinks, milkshakes and mocktails. Leave room for our exquisite desserts. The Lounge, 417 Lincoln Road, Peterborough. Call 01733 709 306 to order for delivery. The Lounge, friendly service with a great atmosphere.
दोस्ता की परेशान है
जरा कर है ना सारा सौदा मुक्या वा मुल्का विच पैसे भेजने
हूं नहीं अमार फूड वाले की फोन खड़का ते फ्री लोकल डिलीवरी कार मंगवा
आलाता उठा क्या स्पेशल आ
उना की लबाई हाइजीन च ग्रेड 5 चीजें चंगियां म्यारी ते सस्तियां ते नाले ऑफर ही ऑफर
और क्या
ताजा गोश्त ताजी सब्जियां ते फ्रूट आटा चावल दालें मसाले ते जूस सारे बिल जमा करने गैस ते इलेक्ट्रिक ने टॉप अप भी करने पाकिस्तान पैसे बिल्कुल फ्री भेजने मतलब के एक चिड़ी ने दूध छड़ी ते हर शय लबनी
उठ जने ने आप उतरा
Amar Food Store and Halal Meat 613B Lincoln Road Peterborough telephone 01733 687374.
Imagine if you had access to NHS GP services outside of your surgery's normal hours. With the Peterborough GP Hub, you can. Based at the Boroughbury Medical Centre on Craig Street, PE1 2EJ, the GP Hub is run by local surgeries and offers weekend and evening appointments for patients registered with a GP in the Greater Peterborough area. Booking an appointment is really easy. Simply call your surgery as normal and ask for an appointment at the GP Hub. Visit greaterpeterborough.gps.nhs.uk for more information.
As of November 2018, over 1,100 people are homeless here in Peterborough, with at least 31 sleeping rough on our streets. Around the world, millions of vulnerable people, including our children, have no place to call home, with only the sky as their blanket and the ground beneath them as their mattress. Please join Penny Appeal Saturday the 19th of January from 5 p.m. for our winter emergency live appeal exclusively on Salaam Radio.
Do you own a restaurant or takeaway? Cater Fair is an expert supplier of new and used commercial catering equipment. Visit caterfair.co.uk for quality equipment on sale at the lowest prices, or call us on 01733 310 115 or visit us at 11 Royce Road, Fengate, Peterborough.
My name is Khalid Sadiq.
I'm Saif Adam.
Assalamu alaikum, this is Baraka Blue.
Yo, 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 this is your boy Harris J, and make sure you guys stay tuned to Salaam Radio 106.2 FM.
Broadcasting 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. This is Salaam.
Welcome back to Salaam Radio on 106.2 FM and online at salamradio.co.uk. This is Adrian Holdstock presenting Community Matters, the radio show for all communities across Peterborough and beyond. My second guest this evening is coming to us over the telephone, and he is Ahmad Boston, political editor for Muslim TV, a UK-based, free-to-air, Islamic-focused satellite television channel and also charity. Welcome, Ahmad. Are you there?
Hello, good evening. Peace be with you, Adrian. Assalamu alaikum to you and all your viewers.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you very much, and it's really good to have you on with us. I gather you've been listening to the first half of our show.
I have indeed. Yes, I have indeed.
Now, we've not met, but I gather you have a lot of understanding of the topic we had been talking about, sight loss and supporting people with disabilities. Would you like to share something of your own situation?
Absolutely. So I've been registered blind since birth. I have two eye conditions, one called microphthalmia, which simply means small eyes, and glaucoma, which is pressure in the eyes. But I do have a limited amount of what's called mobility vision, so I have light perception, shadow perception. As Helen, your previous guest, commented on, I'm somebody who has been registered blind since birth, so I think for a large extent I've been able to get used to living with a visual impairment. But a lot of my work that I do in the media, and particularly in the charity sector through charity Penny Appeal, centers around supporting people who live in the developing world and also here in the UK that are struggling with all range of disabilities, including visual impairment. And this has been a key focus of mine, as Helen mentioned in the first part. A huge problem when we look at disability and living life with a disability is that even today in 2019, Adrian, you have a situation whereby tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people with disabilities are still struggling to reach their full potential and to make their dreams a reality. 1 in 4 people like me, for example, who are blind have no form of employment at all, and even voluntary placements and opportunities are very difficult to come by. And as your previous contributor said, there is a huge fear on the part of many to even leave their own homes. So a very complex situation indeed.
Yes, indeed. I mean, how can society improve that situation? Is it about legislation? Is it about voluntary groups? What should really be done?
Well, I think it requires a variety of things to be done, both on the part of people with disabilities themselves and indeed the society around us. I was speaking to a number of business leaders a few months ago, actually, at the Birmingham City Council House in Birmingham, and they had a breakfast on something called the Disability Confidence Scheme. Now, if I may, the Disability Confidence Scheme is actually a pretty good bit of legislation, a pretty good bit of law that's come in the past few years, which basically allows particular employers to sign up to a scheme where they effectively guarantee an interview to anyone with a disability who applies, who reaches the minimal requirement of a particular job. That's been good, that's been positive, but what I said at that talk was simply society needs to view disability like, and this is just my personal view, some people may disagree, you may indeed disagree, but I said everybody in life has strengths and has weaknesses. I myself personally consider my visual impairment to be perhaps a weakness, but then I have a number of strengths that I would hope an employer who was looking to employ me or people who are interacting with me would look at. And my message was simple: just give people with disabilities a chance. All of us have strengths. All of us have weaknesses. We are where we are today because somebody overlooked our weaknesses and allowed us to showcase our strengths. And I think it's important that society views disability from that perspective, and then and only then I think we can move forward to a society where equal opportunities are readily available.
You've obviously taken your strengths in an interesting direction. The fact that although you have sight loss, you're working in the television industry.
I am indeed. So my my heritage is actually in radio. My passion is radio. I grew up listening to the radio. And actually, as one of my mentors said to me, radio often paints better pictures in television. And television has just been an automatic evolution, I suppose, of broadcasting. It's just annoying for me whenever I'm there and I'm broadcasting and my studio crew say to me, oh, you need to look in that direction. Oh, we have to get the angle right. I say, well, for goodness sake, the guest's online, I'm online, just as talk. So there are those moments where I just get frustrated because obviously I don't have the visual appreciation. But yes, television, again, Helen mentioned this in the first part. When people say to me, oh, did you watch, oh, sorry, did you hear the TV? No, you can say I watched the TV program. There's no problem with that. Yeah, did I watch that program on television? There's no issue with saying that to me. So, yeah, television is pretty much the same as radio for me, except that certain people have the misfortune of seeing me and not just hearing me.
And as I've discovered on becoming a presenter on Salaam Radio, because of modern technology and the internet, everything is videoed as well anyway.
Absolutely. And actually what you find now is that many TV stations, even films that you watch, even if you're looking through Netflix or whichever other provider you go to for your entertainment, they will have many things that are now audio described. So actually when I'm sitting there as a visually impaired person, I can have just as much appreciation as a sighted person because all that is not said is described for me, which I find to be quite useful.
Oh, wonderful. I wonder if you'll connect with this bit of history from myself. For many years ago, I was a Samaritan. Samaritans take calls from people who are very concerned and maybe desperate and possibly even feeling that they want to take their own lives. And most of those calls were over the telephone. Somebody asked me, how can you assess and support somebody when you can't see their body language and you can't look them in the eye? And I said, it was a different sort of conversation because it was only over the telephone, it was only audio, but you do pick up other things when you're just listening to somebody. And I wonder, because you've grown up with that sight loss, you found it's enhanced your ability to hear the body language and to hear what's not actually being said.
Oh, absolutely. And I think obviously there will be instances where people tell me afterwards, oh, when you said that person gave you quite a dirty look. They weren't too happy with that. But again, I pick that up for the most part in what's being said, because actually us as human beings, we're pretty incredible beings when it comes down to it. We really transmit our emotions in a number of ways, and actually all of my appreciation for what's being said to me and what I'm saying and its reaction to it is through audio. And actually that's why I think I've always had a passion for radio from a very early age, and why I listen to a lot of radio even to this day, because I feel that you can really put forward a number of emotions in what you're hearing. For example, if you look at radio dramas, you don't just have people with a visual impairment who listen to them. You have many people on car journeys, people sitting at home and doing the washing up and all sorts, who listen to them, who appreciate them, and actually don't regard their experience as in any way impaired, because the only output they're getting is out of audio.
That's so true. And let us look on the other side of this and celebrate the ability that comes from that ability to listen, and in your own role of interviewing. One or two stories perhaps about people you've interviewed?
Yes, so I've interviewed a range of people over the years, actually. I think probably most well known is the Prime Minister, Theresa May. I've interviewed her twice. Once she was Home Secretary and now as Prime Minister. I've interviewed officials from the United Nations, parliamentarians, a whole range of people, actually, to be honest. I think this is the beauty about media. You come into contact with a number of people. But I think the most inspirational and the most, I guess, motivating for me of people that I've interviewed are fellow people with disabilities who have overcome huge barriers to get where they are. I recall a charity appeal, actually, I presented a number of years ago, where I simply got a phone call and somebody said, well, I think it was an appeal for Palestine, if I remember correctly, and a young boy had raised a number of hundreds of, I think, £200, and I said, how incredible is this? Can the person who's raised this money call in and talk to us? What inspired them? Then the next moment, to cut a long story short, I hear the voice of a grown man on the phone and say, hang on a second, this man's not 11 years old. And he turned around, he said, well, my son raised this money. He can neither talk nor can he walk, but he was so passionate about the humanitarian situation over there that he'd told me to go around the street with him, pushing his wheelchair so he could raise money for a cause that he was clearly passionate about. And really that, for me, was a huge statement to show that people with disabilities, no matter what disability they have, even if it's multiple disabilities, like in the case of this young boy, if they want to achieve something, be that a humanitarian goal or indeed a personal, career-wise one, they can do it with the right support and with the right people around them.
That's wonderful and so heartening to know, and hopefully confidence building for anyone with a disability, that there is more to life and more that can be given and gained.
Absolutely, most certainly. And I think it really does depend on people around you. I think that people who are listening out there who have relatives or friends or people in the community they come into contact with who have a visual impairment or disability, don't treat those people any different to how you treat anyone else. As Helen said, and you concurred in the first part, the worst thing you can do for a person with disabilities is to treat us any differently to how you treat somebody else. And if they require support, they're perfectly capable to ask you for that support or to ask you what type of support they would like. It's important that we just approach an open mind on these sorts of issues, and then I think we can move forward to a more understanding and open society.
Surely, absolutely. Now, it would be remiss of me if I didn't tap into something of your expertise in your profession of political editor at Muslim TV. We live in unprecedented times, and the unfolding story of deadlock and voting over Brexit. Is there a particular angle that Muslim TV are coming from, or are there particular concerns for the Muslim community in Britain that you're picking up on?
Well, at British Muslim TV, like yourselves on Salaam Radio, we're always keen to put out an impartial output and allow people to make their own decision. However, it is unprecedented, as you said. It's the greatest political change that we're seeing in a generation. The Prime Minister came out and was very clear with parliamentarians. This is perhaps the most significant vote that they will ever vote on in their lifetime. And it is true. We are effectively leaving a union that we've been a part of for over 40 years. But I think what people are really concerned about is uncertainty. You know, there's many theories of what should happen. Should there be a permanent customs union? Should we crash out with no deal, meaning we just say to the EU goodbye and nothing else? Do we have a situation where there's a relationship with the single market? There's all these jargon that's being used, but crucially, I think what viewers and what people are saying to me is we want certainty of our jobs, and certainly those jobs and careers that are linked to European Union trade and European Union funding. We want security there, but we also want human rights to be protected. I think a minister came out this week and said, well, leaving the EU will actually result in the far right being strengthened. I do think that is somewhat of an overstatement. I think that is some part of what they call Project Fear. It's just not as linear as that. It's just not as simple as that. But certainly what we do need is certainty. And I think that over the next coming months, you're going to see some really interesting episodes in Parliament. But what's very, very clear is that Yes, you've got people with different opinions, but overwhelmingly, you've got people putting pressure on their politicians to say, look, we're holding you accountable on this one, so make sure that whatever is reached is good. And actually what's positive, I think, to be impartial about it is, yes, the government, being a government, any government wants to come across as confident, but what's been very good about this process is that as it's moved forward, Parliament's taken more and more control, which means instead of a few people sitting in cabinet determining the future of our country, at least you've got about 650 or so of MPs who are actually deliberating over all of this, and we have the ability, of course, to lobby our MPs and talk to them about what we want to see from the process. So interesting times indeed.
And I've been observing some of this on Parliament TV, and I've been incredibly impressed with the Speaker and his chairing of the debates and his giving back to Parliament the opportunity to disagree with itself.
Yes, and this is important actually, because the Speaker has a very important role where he is a chair of proceedings and he is also in charge of certain parts of procedure, although he doesn't set the parliamentary timetable. That's largely in the hands of the government. This is a key role where what he's actually done is he's actually said, look, on such a significant role, for example, he talked about the government motion on Brexit and whether the government motion should be amendable. Now, in normal circumstances, to get the jargon out of the way, when a government puts something across as conclusive and as clear as Brexit, they will say, this is what we've got from the EU, there's no point you changing it, this is how it is. The Speaker's actually turned around and said, well, look, I'm not the government's representative. I'm the custodian of Parliament. I sit as a chair of proceedings in Parliament. And if MPs want to have a say on this, as they clearly do, being the significant decision that it is, then I, as Speaker, will use all in my arsenal, all in my power, and he's a supporter of Arsenal, by the way, he put that out yesterday, all in my arsenal to make sure that people can have a say on it. So, yeah, I think to the extent in which these powers are clear, he's certainly being very forthright with it. And what's quite impressive about this Speaker in particular, not just on Brexit, but in previous circumstances over the past 9 years or so that he's been Speaker, is that he gives particular priority to backbenchers. So those MPs are the ones that don't occupy any senior government or opposition role, but he gives them the role to be able to come in and have their say, which I think is important.
Indeed. So may we move to the charity that
yes.
we've got appeal coming up. It's called the Winter Emergency Penny Appeal. And Salaam Radio have a live radio appeal this coming Saturday, the 19th of January, from 5 p.m. until late. Can you tell us more about the charity?
Yes, so Penny Appeal began in 2009 with the simple motto of small change, big difference, effectively saying that charity shouldn't be that which breaks the bank. It should be easily, it should be affordable, and as people of faith, we believe that it's rewardable. You know, when we give into helping those less fortunate, then the Almighty is pleased with us. And that was really the basis upon which Penny Appeal began in 2009. Again, to cut a long story short, a lot has happened. We're actually celebrating 10 years of Penny Appeal this year, and clearly it's very cold outside today, so one of the key campaigns we're focusing on is our Winter Emergency Appeal, where not only are we providing essential winter support to those around the world in countries such as Pakistan, Palestine, Bangladesh, where the Rohingya refugees are, the Yemen, where we have the worst calamities we've ever seen, I think, for a very long time, and many other countries, but our promise to the people is that we also do whatever we do abroad right here in the UK. So we're coming to Salaam Radio on Saturday and delighted to do so to ensure that we can collect as much funds as possible, not only for countries around the world where the winter cold costs lives, but also here in Peterborough, where, as I understand it, over 1,100 people are regarded as homeless, according to the Trussell Trust, and 31 as of November 2018 were living on the streets of Peterborough. So clearly an unprecedented situation that we hope to, with the support of your great listeners, do something about on Saturday.
No, that's wonderful news, and I think it's wonderful that we're sharing our giving and our concerns, both for people at home that we see on our streets and people in other countries where they're in such desperate need.
Most certainly, and I think the reality is that we live in a global village. You know, we're all connected together, and no matter what faith you subscribe to, and certainly those who subscribe to the Muslim faith know the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, where he described the human beings as being like one body, and if one part of that body is in a state of pain, the entire body is in a state of fever, effectively showing us that we have an obligation to everyone. And really what we say at Penny Appeal is, look, it's not about how much you give. Everybody has their own abilities, everybody has their own financial means, and that's for them. But it's about ensuring people are able to do something. You know, too often we have these big challenges you see taking place where people are competing, even competing to see who can have the finest car or the best house, but none of that really matters. What matters is that in accordance with your own ability, you do something to make your world, your community, that little bit better.
Indeed, and I'm a Christian minister, and from the Christian perspective, it is about all people. Everyone, we believe, is made in God's image, and everyone deserves the humanity that should be given to them. So in Peterborough, for example, we have the Trussell Trust that you mentioned, and Food Bank operates each day of the week, and on Wednesdays it operates out of my church hall, St Mark's Church Hall.
Fantastic.
But Peterborough was actually the first place in the country where Food Bank started to operate from a mosque. A different place of worship from just church halls.
Superb.
Yeah.
Wow.
And in fact, the story I heard was that when the first suggestion was made, the chairman of Trussell Trust rushed up to Peterborough by train to discover what on earth was going on, but was delighted to find people of faith share such common values of humanity between Muslims, Christians, Hindus, others, to be able to say, we cannot abide seeing people going hungry, we cannot abide seeing people sleeping on the streets, and having fallen out of the safety net of society. We need to do something about this. In Peterborough, the other thing, let me share with you, is an organisation that was pulled together, and it started last October, and it pulled together 19 different charities and agencies into Safer Off the Streets Peterborough.
Fantastic.
And they now meet on a regular basis in order to coordinate the efforts, because what we realise is some things have to be done by statutory agencies or supported by them. For example, one of the difficult areas is in terms of addiction. Another difficult area is in terms of mental health. And for there you might well need professional people to be involved.
Without a doubt, yes.
And then you've got voluntary organisations. For a few years now in Peterborough, we've had the Winter Night Shelter, which engages with a small number of people every evening, giving them a safe place to sleep, but also a chance to wash or shower, to have a meal, and particularly to have conversations with people who are concerned to hear their story and then to know how to help them move on in life.
Superb. And actually, this is a quality that's actually very close to me personally, and also us as a charity, as Penny Appeal, because a unique part of our story and my story is actually what we always say is that when we do things together, we're stronger. So when we began, one of our first campaigns at Penny Appeal was an initiative called Feed Our World, where we said, feed someone, an orphan, a widow, a poor needy person, for £1 a meal in over 30 crisis countries around the world. But we didn't do it on our own. We teamed up with many charities across the world. And what was incredible for me was that we had a number of charities coming on and saying, well, we're delivering in this area, we're delivering in this area, and we're delivering in this area. And this part of partnership, working together, I think is really, really important, because it's all about what we want our society to become. We want to become a society, and I'm sure you've observed this, Adrian, in your role as a minister in the wider community, that as a society we've moved towards materialism, we've moved towards selfishness and me, myself, and I,
Yes.
but actually it's our faith communities and our faith institutions that are playing a pivotal role in keeping us all together, in showing us our obligations to one another and to those less fortunate across the globe, which I think is really important and which I think is something we're looking to revive in our appeal on Saturday come 5 p.m.
I think we need to take back that initiative that people of faith is not about privatised religion. It's about the whole of life and the whole of society. So let's model those examples of good practice and good behaviour across anything that anyone might suggest is a divide between faiths or religions or cultures or languages.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because if you look at the scale of the challenges around the world, they're unprecedented. You know, 1 billion people, 1 billion people are going to sleep hungry every night, 600 million of whom are children. And when it comes to water, it's shocking. You've got hundreds of millions, I think some statistics say 873 million people around the world. And I always say, you know, we can take people to the moon. And there's nothing wrong with that, but we can't give every single man, woman and child access to fresh, clean, portable water. There's got to be something wrong with our world when we live in that society. That's not something that we can address on our own as one faith group or one community or one city or one town. We have to do it together.
So we have the penny appeal and the small change, big difference strapline. I love that. But timers competed against us. Ahmad Boston from Muslim TV and the charity, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Absolute pleasure. Have a lovely evening to you and your viewers.
Thank you. That's it for tonight on Community Matters. Remember, you are the community that matters. Wherever you are, we'd like everybody to be a community that lives in peace and harmony. Salaam, shalom, and the peace of God to you all. Good night.